All right, welcome everybody. Today I have former National Hockey League player Kris Beech with us. Kris is the founder of AIM Mindfulness and Aimability, which we'll get into in a little bit. A certified mindfulness instructor. He earned his Master's of Science while playing pro in Europe, a Master's of Science in Sports Management, and he was selected 7th overall in 1999 by the Washington Capitals. Played 7 seasons in the NHL and 8 seasons in Europe. And prior to his pro career, played 4 seasons in the Western League with the Calgary Hitmen. He's won the Ed Chenoweth Cup in the Western League and the Calder Cup with Hershey in the American League and the Swedish Elite Hockey League Championship in 2010. Welcome, Kris. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Nate. It's a pleasure.
All right, we'll jump right into it. Today we're talking about career transition, mindfulness, and what you're doing now. Sound good?
Absolutely. I apologize for the missing tooth. It's been a 20-year battle, so I'm losing currently again with the 2 front teeth. So.
It's perfect, right? We were just joking about that earlier. It's perfect. When you said you lost it, I thought you got it knocked out, but you've actually misplaced it.
I misplaced my tooth, yeah. So I'm in the market.
Yeah.
I'm in the market.
Okay, maybe someone listening is in dental implants.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your preparation for your life after your first career in sport, after a long NHL and then a long European pro career.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I really didn't really know too much about athlete transition, and didn't fully grasp it at the time that I started to look into other interests. I started to learn a lot more about athlete transition when I studied that Master's in Sports Management, which was my last year, and I learned I was actually doing the right things to transition, I was inspired to dig into other interests through my exploration of mindfulness, and it really came about because I had put a lot of time into the practice of mindfulness as a player. It helped me in many different ways with performance and well-being away from the rink, and I was pretty open about that exploration with other people, and I got a lot of questions about it from friends and family, and I found myself kind of teaching people what I knew, or not teaching them, just sharing what I knew about it, and it inspired me to look into how I could do that in a more professional way, and actually, a way that people could count on was legitimate. So I looked into how to get certified or some form of education in how to coach or help people out with mindfulness, and that that led me down that path. And at the time, I think I started to realize that I was coming to the end of my career. It was the last couple of years of my career, and as you get around the age of beyond 30, I was hitting the age around 35, 34. The paychecks start to get a little bit less, and the jobs are harder to come by. So I kind of saw the end coming, and started to think a lot more of what I was going to do after my career was done. So that preparation started, and then from there I got certified to teach meditation mindfulness in 2015 from a company down in the U.S., which was one of the first kind of legitimate companies that were doing it. Now there's a number of certifications out there that are really quite good. And then from there, I really enjoyed getting back into studying other interests. Because as a player, over the years, I really didn't look into other interests, and I was all hockey. Even from the advice from my parents and others around me, saying you really need to develop other interests, to help at the end of your career, but also just with performance and having something other than hockey to occupy the mind. So when I started to look into studying again and investing time into other things, I really enjoyed it. And, that spurred me on to take up an opportunity in Northern Ireland to play and study a Master's of Science in Sports Management, which was one of the greatest experiences of my playing career, studying at a high level of academia and playing at the same time. It was a little bit of a challenge. I'd never written an academic paper at that level. So the first one was definitely a lot of holy shit moments. What did I get myself into? But I learned from it. Had a lot of, I had to do a lot of presenting in that course, which helped me learn how to prepare to present and be in front of a group and present, really quite technical information. So, and I learned a lot about my experience. It connected the dots for me in my real world experience, looking into different areas of research in relation to sport management. I learned so much and helped me connect the dots in my personal life and athletic career experience. One of those things being athlete transition, where I learned a lot about it, and it turned out I was doing all the right things towards the end of my career. And I learned also that it took about 2 years for an athlete to fully develop their new identity after they've finished playing, and which is about right on time. It took me a good year and a half, 2 years to really fully develop what I was working towards after the game as a business owner and an entrepreneur and a mindfulness coach alongside coaching hockey and other things. So yeah, that was the process, and here we are 4 years later, and continue to know that life after hockey more and more as I go. So
Yeah. Thanks for that. There's a lot we could unpack there. And you're saying at 34, 35 as an athlete, job's getting harder and harder. You hadn't yet gone to school beyond high school at that point. A lot of people transitioning in other professions have had a career that they can launch from. And as athletes, we can have to reinvent ourselves at that point and use all the skills and all the assets that we've developed, but help identify those and work on that new identity. You mentioned that you had started to discover that in the master's program, that you'd already done the mindfulness training. Tell me about the moment in your career as an athlete where mindfulness became something so interesting to you that you're going to look into where you could actually get proper training about it. That must have been an interesting time in your life.
it was, and it was quite a ways through my career. It was like 10 years in before I really got to know that training, and it was out of necessity. I was at the ups and downs I had with my career to that point were really significant, and I definitely the intangible side of the game, the soft skills of performance, being group performance, individual performance, were lacking in my experience. I had things like grit, determination. I could dial in when I had to, but there was other elements of it that I was missing, and it made it for a really tough tough ride through success, and what I would see as failures. Had a lot of high expectations. Like you mentioned, as a first round draft pick, 7th overall, from a young age, I was pegged and compared to star after star. As a first round top 10 draft pick, you're slated as a franchise player, potentially. So really high expectations, and started off in Pittsburgh in my first year, playing alongside Mario Lemieux and guys like that. Had a great year as a 20-year-old, and then the next year I got sent down to the minors, which was like completely off my radar and really affected who I was as a person. Like that was, for me, that really challenged my identity as this player that was going to be a star, and it really affected what I viewed as success the rest of my career. And I was always trying to get to that level, and so anything less than that, there was still a bit of a tinge of failure in the back of my mind. So it made for a lot of ups and downs, and combined that with some mental health, some clinical mental health issues. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder at 26, and very, very challenging time in Syracuse there. When I was in the AHL, still got called up that year and played some of the best hockey of my career in Columbus, but it was challenging, to say the least, and managed that for another four years, and it turned out to be an incorrect diagnosis, and finally in Sweden was diagnosed as bipolar disorder, which I didn't fully accept at the time. It's another story. It took me several years to fully accept that. And it was, there's people way much more sick than I was. The manic side of that illness for me was very low degree. It was pretty much centered around depression and anxiety disorder. So there's a lot of challenges, and as an athlete, you're privileged to have access to a pro athlete to the best in North America when I was over here, with the terms of health professionals and support, and they definitely got me through a lot of that stuff, but still wasn't quite enough. And it was to a point in my career where I had to say either I stick with this and do what I'm doing, because at that point I'd lost all self-confidence and enjoyment with the game, but I was still a pro. I could contribute. I knew how to contribute no matter how I was feeling, but it was all, it was tough to go to the rink every day, or I investigate and try to figure out how to make some changes so I can continue to play, because deep down there was still a love there, and deep down I knew I still had skill and ability that wasn't being tapped into. So I started to investigate on my own. At the time, my mother was into the research of neuroplasticity, how the brain is malleable, and how you can make changes in the brain. My father's a physician, so he kind of helped me investigate that a little bit too. And I started reading about that, and started to understand that yes, I have certain things going on up there, but I can actually make changes. And that took me to meditation and mindfulness as a way to facilitate neuroplastic changes in the brain. And at the time, there was some really strong correlational evidence to neuroplasticity being facilitated by mindfulness. Around 2010, 2011, some good research coming out. And, I'm a man of science, so that kind of hooked me. And I sat down in practice one day, and it was the first time in many years that I had some silence and breaks in between some of the negative thought patterns that were swirling around in my head pretty consistently. And, knowing what I learned about neuroplasticity and understanding as an athlete, the ability I had to commit to practice and repetition. I understood right away that that was something that I could rep out, and that it would make changes, positive changes, and it did. It helped with my performance, helped me uncover my ability and skill again, helped with my well-being away from the rink. It helped me make more positive life choices that would go towards my health. And from there, yeah, just huge impact on my life. So it inspired me to look into how to share that.
Yeah. Kris, thanks for being so honest and sharing all that. I know someone's going to watch this, and your experience is going to have a profound impact on the choices that they make moving forward. So thank you for that. You know, as I read your bio, 7th overall pick, almost 10 years in the NHL, almost 10 years in Europe. That's that Instagram snapshot of most athletes would be jealous of that career, and for you to share your vulnerability that during that journey there was it was a journey and there was highs and lows is yeah, you've I'm sure you've helped a lot of people just by saying that out loud here, and I know you've already helped a lot of athletes with that, so it's
Yeah,
really
and I think
impactful.
the important part for me was that you know, I had this like I wasn't with the game in a good way. Like it triggered so many even the smells or the sounds of the arena would trigger emotional reactions, and it would trigger thoughts of past coaches, what they said to me, things like that. So I was in a really tough spot with the game, but I trained to love it again. It was really what happened, and now I'm fully involved with the game again, coaching kids, and I love it. I love being on the ice, and I think one of the biggest questions I had then was if it can really help me in a situation where my mind is not well, what can it do for people with a healthy mind in a proactive sense, and training in a proactive way. You know, that was a really inspiring thought, and that's, you know, the biggest communication for me is that you don't have to be in the dumps to get benefit from working on these intangible skills. They are skills that you can enhance and develop just like any other tangible skill. And that's the biggest communication that I try to get to athletes and whoever I'm working with, is that you know, these are really important skills that can be worked on just like any other skill.
That's a great segue. Now let's jump into aimability and your desire to help athletes, people in the workplace, through a lot of this. Tell me what aimability is all about. I know we're partnered on it, and I'm really excited to be involved in an incredible group of people. So, what is it? And it's a great part of your transition story as well. So, what would you like to share about that?
Yeah, so it's yeah, absolutely. We're honored to have someone like you on there, providing your experience and education to people. Um, Really, I actually wrote a master's thesis for the plan in that education, and that was 5 years or 4 years ago. So it's taken some time to get there, but a few mistakes along the way, a few moments where I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, but you know, gradually chipped away at it, and the premise of it is to harness the elite athlete privilege, and make accessible the highest level of performance. Sorry, there's my two. Performance and health professionals out there, make it accessible to more people, and you know, that's the overall ethos and overarching aim. And we're looking at not only for athletes, you know, grassroots athletes. We're looking at elite amateur athletes, pro athletes, the leadership involved, the coaching involved in those organizations. But it's not only for athletes, it's for corporations, business, academic institutions, and what we're working towards is developing that support network and providing essentially a network for life where you have people of different skill sets, like yourself, who's an executive leadership coach. I specialize in mindfulness. We have other coaches that are principle and value-based coaches. We have psychotherapists. So people of different skill sets, high-level people, accessible to more people, and harnessing that elite athlete privilege that I was lucky enough to have access to. We talked about it before we got on with this interview. The transferability of these skills, these intangible skills. We have an assessment as well, flourishing strength and well-being assessment. It looks out at 10 life skills and competencies. And when we take that assessment and show those results to any environment, leadership of any environment, whether that's athletic, academic, corporate, when they see these core competencies, quite often they say, we want those people. We want people like that. So we can take a look, we can tell a story of individuals, we can tell a story of an organization, a specific group, and we can tailor our coaching to that story and ensure that we're working on enhancing the strengths and helping build up any opportunities for improvement. That's what the platform's all about. And we're for corporations, academic institutions, athletes, we're looking at intangible skill development, but we're also moving into tangible and technical skill development, in particular with starting with sports like hockey, field hockey, and other sports, fastball. But the goal is to get into other education in all those different silos that we mentioned. So yeah, very exciting, and it's been a labor of love for several years, and we're lucky to have people like yourself enthusiastic about contributing and collaborating on it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's my honor, and just so our listeners are clear, when someone comes to the platform, they will enter it in a way that is unique to what they're looking for, isn't it? And so it's going to be essentially a customized experience of webinars and courses and one-on-one access globally, without the restrictions of needing to travel to a workshop, et cetera. It's really forward thinking in terms of, as you mentioned, like breaking down that barrier of entry to access world-class skill sets and resources in a way that's customized and unique to the groups. Is that how's that for a summary back at you?
That is, you know it just as well as I do. We've had a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I love about it. We got so many great people, and the enthusiasm to contribute to something like this has been wonderful, and we look forward to launching it, and it's coming soon, very, very soon, and it's something that I think that as a collective, with all the people we have, it's going to be a great service.
Yeah. It's there's a great thread here between the expectations you had for yourself and others had for you as a top 10 draft pick in the National Hockey League, to a great career with a lot of highs and a lot of lows, into arriving where you are now. There's an obvious thread, your willingness and ability to help people at wherever they're at in that journey. And I know we had wanted to to touch on your athlete transition happened after almost 20 years at the pro level. The same highs and lows can happen to people in what we would call regular careers, as well as teenagers coming out of the game, athletes that have dedicated so much of their time and energy to one thing. And just wanted to give you the opportunity to share your insight about that.
Yeah, quite often when we talk, especially in sports, but yeah, you nailed it. Any type of change is hard, and there's going to be I mean, you've got to know Mehdi, who's a partner on the technology side with Ability. We have conversations. I ask him. He's been such a great mentor to me as well, because there's still times where I feel like things are just a little bit chaotic with where it's headed, and he's been developing numerous projects and technology for 30 years. And I asked him if that ever goes away. He's like, no. He's like, no, you're going to have moments where you feel like you're in the flow, and there's going to be moments where it feels chaotic. So I think embracing that is one thing that I've learned, embracing vulnerability, embracing the feeling of challenge, that if it wasn't challenging, then there'd be no feeling of satisfaction. So just embracing that and moving through it with that mindset is really important. And then, yeah, you nailed it. In sports, we quite often think about athlete transition as elite amateur athletes or pro athletes that have put a lot of years into their sport, and have to transition out of that. But it can also happen at younger ages, and this is something that was revealed in my research with kids that are specializing in specific sports. It can happen in the adolescent age when they've put a lot of years into and a lot of time and commitment into one sport, and they may have aspirations to move on to higher levels. And if that doesn't happen, there's definitely a very similar transition out of that sport, and it can be very challenging. And I recall the numbers in terms of mental health issues in relation to athlete transition. It's about 25% of athletes will experience clinical mental health challenge in athlete transition. So it's legitimate, and as a young athlete, it's something to, now there's people like us that can help with that transition. And it's really important to understand that it's not just for adults. It can happen to adolescents and younger athletes as well. So something to be aware of.
Yeah. We've been preaching for nearly 2 decades now in the sport development model that specializing so young can be detrimental, and it goes for anyone who's sunk so much time and energy into one thing, and either it doesn't work out or it does and it comes to an end. Looking back now on your teen years, your hockey career, what you're witnessing across all industries and all sports, you talked about being encouraged by your parents way back when to have other interests while still focusing on that thing. What would you say to people as they are pursuing those dreams and want to be on track, but having that extra thing, just the importance of that? How can we wrap up this conversation with a positive
Yeah,
message
for
about
young
that?
kids, for sure. Everybody in general. Like I think, things that satisfy us internally, like the internal satisfaction, internal motivation, are really important. And things that, novelty, new things, curiosity, and other interests, whether it's ourselves or other people, and really developing, love for what you're doing, and understanding that those types of motivations are, if we're heavily balanced in those areas, the feeling of improvement, learning, growth, it's really, really important. And, as a young athlete, I got sidetracked a little bit with the external motivation that came with hockey. So I signed a huge contract at 19. So money, status, in hockey culture, it was a lot of carrot and stick motivation. And I lost a little bit of that internal motivation. So really important to stick around that internal motivation, the things that come from here, and other interests. 100%. It's really really important to continue to explore other interests, whether it's sports or anything outside of sports. It's hugely beneficial, not only for transitioning later, but when you have just one thing, and that everything is dependent on what happens in that one thing. You're not gonna, not just me, but it's research shows that you're going to limit your potential in that one thing if it's strictly that focus. So I always, kids that I work with, I always encourage them to explore other things outside of hockey and really pay attention to their interests and put some time into those things as well.
There's time in the day for it.
Yeah,
isn't
absolutely.
there? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kris, where will people be finding Aimability if people want to track you down and learn more about what you're up to? Where can they do that?
Yeah, well, they can reach out to me directly. At the moment, our site is not launched yet, so they could maybe we could set up a little connection via yourself if they're interested in learning more. We can make that connection at the moment directly through email or whatever it may be. Like I said, the site will be launched very soon. We're just finishing up a few final touches, but at the moment that would be the best way to do it. There's also an email on our current site, aimindtraining.com, which is the name of the old site, which we're rebranding Aimability here very quickly. So yeah, they could reach out that way as well.
Great. Thanks for your time, Kris.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate. My pleasure as always.